Welcome to Monday Morning Reaction presented by MetaQuest. I'm Mitch, and I'm back here to rank the teams that can knock off the Kansas City Chiefs this season and hold them back from that three-peat. I get it. I understand the Bills just beat them. The Buffalo Bills ended their undefeated season. But that doesn't mean the Chiefs aren't still going to win the Super Bowl. I'm sure they're favored by most NFL fans. So in this live stream, I'm going to rank the 8 NFL teams that have the greatest opportunity and chance to beat the Chiefs and hold them from a three-peat. So considering that statement, I lean into the AFC. Because I'm thinking about the teams that are most likely going to play the Chiefs and have an opportunity to beat them and knock them out of the playoffs. So considering all these teams in a playoff scenario, it doesn't matter if they beat them in the regular season. Buffalo just beat them. It doesn't matter one bit. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to be a top seed in the AFC. But which teams, when it comes to a playoff matchup, could actually beat the Chiefs? Whether it be in the Super Bowl for the NFC or in the AFC. So let's rank the top 8 teams that can beat the Chiefs. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And let me know if there's a team that stands out to you, or if there's maybe like a dark horse team that you would consider that you think matches up really well with the Chiefs. So obviously factoring in coaching, player personnel, matchup in terms of what the Chiefs are this year, and which teams match up the best. Let's begin with the number 8 team that can beat the Chiefs. We watched this matchup actually just last week, the Denver Broncos. I wouldn't have put the Broncos on this list just a couple weeks ago, but after the Broncos nearly beat the Chiefs, if it were not for a blocked 32-yard field goal, I don't know how many times I've seen a field goal from that distance not go through on a game-winning attempt. And then it was blocked. So Denver nearly went into Kansas City just last week and beat their division rival. On top of that, we just saw the Broncos this week dismantle limb by limb potentially the NFC South champions. Game was never competitive or close. Bo Nix threw for 4 touchdowns. Sean Payton is feeling himself calling these screens. And the defense is elite in Denver. So there's a lot of different reasons I love the Broncos when they play the Chiefs. First of all, we've seen them go toe-to-toe with them multiple times over the last 2 years. They beat them last season, and they nearly beat them this season. They also will have a rare familiarity if they do play them in the playoffs. The Broncos likely will be the 7 seed, probably, most likely, maybe the 6 seed, but let's say they're the 7 seed. The Chiefs might be the 1 seed. This is actually pretty realistic on top of it, and they would have faced them 3 times. We still haven't seen that second matchup in the regular season this year. Maybe they beat them in the regular season when it comes to playing in Denver. But in the postseason, Denver has a good defense that has a really strong interior defensive line. They're not going to get ran on by the Chiefs and allow the Chiefs to just have easy yards in the run game and easy first down, second down play calls to set them up for third down. They have a really underrated edge rush to expose that tackle position of Kansas City. And offensively, they're just getting better and better and better. Bo Nix is playing better with more confidence, more accurate. Sean Payton is figuring out which play calls work for Bo Nix. You know, the offensive line, I think, low-key is one of the best in football. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. Play action is settling into this offense, and they have one of the best screen games in football. They're actually a lot like the Chiefs. They kind of matriculate the ball down the field. They're not super explosive, but they find different ways to attack you horizontally and vertically. So Denver, a team in their division with a great coach who understands how to manage a game and how to game plan for a playoff setting, is a team that I would watch out for at number 8. At number 7, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Steelers right now only have 2 losses, and they're looking like a legit playoff team. We're going to understand how great the Steelers are and how big of an AFC threat they truly are down this stretch, because they play a lot of pretty tough opponents, including like their entire division. They just took on the Ravens at home and they knocked off the Ravens, which is step number 1 to proving that they are a legit threat this year. Because it feels like we've seen the Steelers each and every year. They're somehow above 500, no matter who the quarterback is, no matter who's injured, who's playing, or who's in. But Mike Tomlin figures it out. But they've still not won a playoff game since 2016. So what makes them a threat to the Chiefs? I think, first of all, similarly to the Broncos, they have an elite defense. Specifically, their front 7 is phenomenal. Whether it be Alex Highsmith in there or not, they just proved against the Ravens that Nate Herbig is a dog. Preston Smith was a nice addition. They've got Cam Hayward still playing at a very high level. And of course, TJ Watt. And that front 7 that can, again, one of the biggest weaknesses of the Chiefs, if not the biggest weakness on their entire roster, is their tackle position. If TJ Watt and Highsmith and Herbig and these guys can just continue to get after Mahomes rep after rep, down after down, drop back pass after drop back pass, that's going to go a long way in forcing pressure, turnovers, stops, and getting your defense off the field. Their offense this year is a ball control offense with a hint of explosiveness due to Russell Wilson's moon ball that we've seen continuously. George Pickens becoming a really awesome receiver. And then even having a guy like Mike Williams, who has always thrived against the Chiefs as a big target who can box out and win jump contested catches. Najee Harris is playing the best ball of his career. Jalen Warren is dynamic as well. And Arthur Smith gives the Steelers an actual offensive coordinator who might be able to go toe-to-toe with somebody like Steve Spags. So I think the Steelers are the best coach they've been on offense in a while. I think this is the best quarterback they've had since Ben retired in Russell Wilson. It's not saying much, but I do believe that. Plus, he's a Super Bowl champion. He's clutch in big moments. He doesn't turn the ball over very much. And the defense is arguably the best in the league. Now, the reason I only have the Steelers at number 7 is because they have not fared well against the Chiefs in recent matchups and recent meetings. Now, maybe the fact that the Chiefs aren't as explosive or as offensive as an identity, like they're not all about the big plays, the Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, what they used to be when the Steelers would face them. They're more of a defensive team, which I think actually plays into Mike Tomlin's style, plays into the Steelers' style. This would also have to be played in Arrowhead in the playoffs. That's also something that I think is likely. So that's also something that I had to consider. But I think the Steelers definitely can win a gritty game, a defensive game, a ball possession game against the Chiefs, which could lead to an upset. Matty Bean says the Steelers only 7. They should be higher. So yeah, basically, essentially, I feel like, first of all, it's Russell Wilson at the end of the day against Patrick Mahomes. This current incarnation, this is not 2015, 2016 Russell Wilson. This is 2024 Russell Wilson. The offensive line, I think, for the Steelers, especially in their passing game, and the inconsistency of their offense is another reason where I just look at they're very like big play oriented through the passing game, and they're very reliant on running the ball. The Chiefs have been phenomenal against the run, and if they're not able to hit some of those shots down the field, I do think they'll struggle. And then the recent matchups that they've played, like I even recall a playoff game where it was like a complete blowout between Mike Tomlin's Steelers and Andy Reid's Chiefs. So that's what I'm considering here, but I definitely feel like the Steelers this year and the way the Chiefs are currently constituted, this could be an upset for sure. We need to talk about the Steelers' voodoo magic the same way we talk about the Chiefs' voodoo magic in how they win games. No, we totally do, I think. There's a reason that if you're gambling on football on Sundays, there's a reason you love Mike Tomlin when he's an underdog, because this team just always seems to rise to the occasion no matter who they're playing. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have similar voodoo magic to the Kansas City Chiefs. Absolutely a great point. At number 6, another team in this same lane of great coach, championship-worthy coach. We talked about Sean Payton. We talked about Mike Tomlin. Has a good defense. But this team, the separation for me between the LA Chargers, the Denver Broncos, and the Pittsburgh Steelers is how Justin Herbert is playing. I think you could very much argue without hesitation that Herbert has been a better quarterback this year than Patrick Mahomes. I don't think that's a hot take statistically or just eye test wise. I think Justin Herbert has been as good as pretty much, those other elite players, Allen, Lamar, in that conversation, Joe Burrow, with the best quarterbacks that have played this season. And because they have a quarterback like this and they have a coach like Harbaugh, they can go into any game and have a chance. You combine that with a defense that I think is schematically very sound. They are never outcoached. They have a very dynamic pass rush on the edge when you're talking about the rookie they've picked up, Khalil Mack, who was injured against the Bengals, Joey Bosa. When you have that edge rush that can make plays and cause disruption for Mahomes, when you have a solid run defense that doesn't give up easy yards in the run game, and you have this Minter scheme that I think can cause some errors and bad throws from quarterbacks and indecision from quarterbacks due to their safety rotations, the different complex coverages they're able to throw out there, the blitz packages they bring. This is going to be a dynamic matchup. They're going to play, if they play in the playoffs, it would be 3 times, just like the Denver Broncos. And it feels like how Herbert is playing, Herbert's due to win one of these games out of 3 against Patrick Mahomes. So that's a scary matchup, I would say, for the Chiefs, especially with how the offense of the Chargers is ascending. We've seen their run game begin the year pretty hot with J.K. Dobbins. He finished against the Bengals, but their passing game is really coming on between Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and then Will Dissly. They're making a lot of plays down the field. They've been a lot more explosive than you would have thought these last few weeks. And Harbaugh just knows how to play in these games, knows how to manage these games. They play physical. They play tough. They never make a lot of mistakes. Herbert doesn't throw the ball to the other team. He actually has the best interception percentage in football. He also has the highest big-time throw percentage in football. So Justin Herbert's a baller. The Chargers have a good defense. They don't make a lot of mistakes, and they've got a good pass rush to get after Mahomes. This is a Chargers team that is similar to Steelers and Broncos, but they've got Justin Herbert, and that's the difference. That's why I have them at number 6. Chargers are beating the Chiefs when they play next. Lock it in, says Leland. I could see it. I definitely could see it. They play in Kansas City next time. So they played already. It was 17-10. It was a bit of a funky game. I would say that it was not one that I would really note for either team because the Chargers, they definitely had some injuries in that game, but they also were kind of figuring out what their identity was and is this season under Harbaugh and Herbert was still dealing with that injury. On top of that, the Chiefs lost Rashee Rice in the middle of the game. I think that was the first week they didn't have Isaiah Pacheco. So there were definitely some issues for both sides that I think you have to consider when talking about that game. I'm really intrigued to see how they match up this second regular season game to see how that would transfer to a potential playoff game. But yeah, man, Chargers definitely under consideration to knock off the Chiefs. Chargers just need a wide receiver 1. The defense is solid, says Grayson. I agree, man. I think one area I didn't bring up, the offensive line of the Chargers is the best I've ever seen it for Justin Herbert. Their tackle position is phenomenal. I thought against, Sunday Night Football against the Bengals, he had tons of time. And when Herbert's in that creation mode, beyond just being the robotic passer terminator that he is in the pocket, when he's able to move and create time and buy time and create plays down the field, he is like as good as any player in football. So yeah, the Chargers offensive line and their defense also huge factors in playing the Chiefs as well. And at number 5, I have the Fly Eagles. Fly. The Philadelphia Eagles are at number 5. This is only the second of 2 NFC teams I'll have on this list because I think there are 2 clear identifiable favorites in the NFC. I think the Eagles right now are one of them after their win and, in my opinion, a statement against the Commanders at home on Thursday Night Football. The Eagles have played the Chiefs before in a Super Bowl, so at least they'll have some familiarity with taking them on in a big game. The Eagles very well could have won that Super Bowl, if you look back at it. Now, the teams have changed since then. I think the Chiefs offensively are much worse. I think the Chiefs defensively are a little bit better. I think the Eagles offensively, Jalen Hurts is probably a little bit worse, but their defense, I think, is much better. So I look at the Eagles right now, and I just think they're a very complete team. I don't trust Nick Sirianni very much, but I do trust Vic Fangio. When you look back at Vic Fangio playing Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, he didn't win very many games when he was in Denver, but he did put out some good defensive game plans that really stifled the Chiefs, and he understands how to play them. So that would come in handy if they did face off in the Super Bowl. On top of that, Kellen Moore could be a pretty creative coordinator on offense that could scheme some things up. But you just look at the Eagles and their physical talent on offense. It's just really hard to defend no matter how good your defense schematically is if you're Steve Spagnuolo. There's only so much you can do to stop Saquon Barkley and this awesome offensive line from running the ball 5 yards a clip. And then if you resort to stopping the run heavily in the box, you've got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith winning their matchups on the outside, on top of Dallas Goedert, who had a phenomenal Super Bowl performance just a couple years ago against this Chiefs team. And the Chiefs are also pretty poor against tight ends this year. So you look at the Eagles, and as long as Jalen Hurts is on his game and he's not turning it over and he's not playing a little bit erratic, which we've seen throughout the season, I felt even in that first half against the Commanders, this defense is faster than last year, better than last year. Their interior is good. Jalen Carter leads the way. Some of these young guys like Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean are really stepping up. Zach Bond's been phenomenal in the middle. Their linebacker position has been upgraded. I think the Eagles are very well-rounded, and they can also ball control the game. They can possess the ball. They can essentially go on, we're playing 4 downs every single drive in a playoff game where Jalen Hurts can tush push on 4th and 2 or 4th and 1 pretty much every time and get a first down. So the control that they'll have on the offensive line is also a major factor, on top of having a very good defense right now in Philadelphia. So at number 5, I have the Eagles. Thrasher says, brother, the Falcons beat the Eagles. I'm not impressed. Well, the Eagles have improved since then. They have definitely improved, especially defensively. You look at how they have changed even their personnel. They've added Cooper DeJean to the nickel cornerback position. They've continued to plug in different players like Nolan Smith, who's given them a little bit of speed on the edge. Josh Sweat has played better. Their offense has found their identity, which is run heavy, led by their MVP, Saquon Barkley. They have changed as a team. They have evolved. They had 2 new coordinators. We thought it would be a slow start for them. So yeah, the Falcons pulled off a fluky victory where Saquon dropped the ball on 4th down and Kirk Cousins put together some 2-minute magic. But that shouldn't convince you for them to not be a threat for the Super Bowl. Braylon says, I can respect the list, but I think the Packers and Commanders should get some recognition. First of all, I thought the Packers should have lost against the Chicago Bears, who just lost to the Patriots by like 2 touchdowns. So the Packers need to do some more convincing. We'll see how they play against the 49ers, which is a huge game in the NFC next week. The Commanders, I just don't think they have a good enough defense, and I also feel like Jaden is kind of regressing. Rookie wall is coming up for Jaden Daniels right now. I just don't think they're and then also you have to throw into this conversation, they have to make the Super Bowl. So that's also a consideration. Will they go through the entire NFC? I at least took that into consideration in this list, where I'm thinking about the teams that are likely to play them, on top of also, if they made it to the Super Bowl, how would I look at that matchup? And I don't think the Commanders necessarily, I just can't pick a rookie quarterback over Patrick Mahomes in that big game setting. Before we get to the top 4 teams that I believe can knock off Kansas City from a three-peat, let's get to the guys that balled out this week in the NFL and completed a quest for greatness. This is a quest for greatness presented by MetaQuest. Whatever you're into, whether it's movies, gaming, or fitness, get more into it with MetaQuest. The first player that I felt completed their quest for greatness was Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions. One of the most impressive wins I've seen in the NFL in a long, long time. Dominant, 52-6. The Detroit Lions dismantled the Jacksonville Jags. 24 for 29, 412 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. And I don't blame you if you did not watch a single second of this game, but that is unbelievable. That is some 07 Patriots type of production right there from the Detroit Lions. Just unbelievable stuff from Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions. 52-6. MVP conversation, Jared Goff, he put himself right back in it after 5 interceptions on Sunday Night Football against the Texans. He comes back with only 5 incompletions, 4 touchdowns, and 400 yards. So Jared Goff, absolute baller against Jacksonville. Maybe the best team in football. Taysom Hill is my second player that I felt absolutely completed a quest for greatness. He was unbelievable. This is the most complete football player in the NFL, I would argue. Whether it's throwing the football, running the football, catching the football, playing special teams, quarterback, tight end, running back, Taysom Hill is a throwback in the greatest way. 7 rushes, 138 yards, and 3 tutties against the Cleveland Browns. And not only that, okay, that would be a good game. That might have put him on the list alone. 3 touchdowns on 7 rushes, 138 yards. He also had 8 catches on 10 targets for 50 yards. 8 catches and 7 rushes. And then he threw the ball for 18 yards. Now, he did throw a pick. He did fumble. But Taysom Hill is one of my favorite players to watch in the NFL. He's so tough, and he brings a spirit to the Saints each Sunday. So absolute quest for greatness for Taysom Hill. And then Justin Herbert on Sunday Night Football. Now, completion percentage, not the best, right? 17 for 36. He struggled in the second half, at the beginning of the second half, to complete his amazing first half, which might have been the best half I've seen from a quarterback the entire season. It was absolutely unbelievable stuff. He was throwing laser beam after laser beam, rocket after rocket, tight window throw after tight window throw. And it just so happened that the tight window throws he would throw in the second half, they were just dropped, or they were batted, or something. Like the Bengals managed to get a hand on it or something. But then in the second half, when he really needed to come through on a game-winning drive, he hits Ladd McConkey a couple times. They get in field goal position. And then ultimately, J.K. Dobbins says, I'm just going to get a touchdown anyways. But Herbert had over 350 total yards, 297. I almost didn't give him enough credit. Passing yards and 2 total touchdowns. He did fumble in the game, but he did outlast Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow tried to come back. Justin Herbert just said, I've got too many lasers for you, Mr. Joe. So Chargers with their best win of the season, in my opinion, 34-27 on Sunday Night Football with a statement win. And Herbert, I think, puts himself in the MVP conversation after that game. 5 rushes, 65 yards. That's not Justin Herbert. 350 yards. That is your quest for greatness. Herbert, Taysom, and Goff, the guys that went crazy in week 11. Let's get to number 4. The Baltimore Ravens are my number 4 team that can stop the three-peat of the Kansas City Chiefs. And Steelers fans right now are probably like, whoa, why are the Steelers 7 and the Ravens 4? First of all, if you're a Steelers fan, you should understand that the Steelers always beat the Ravens and that it almost has nothing to do with how good the teams are. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, you don't have Lamar Jackson on your team. All right. So the Ravens are number 4 because they have Lamar Jackson. And there are moments where Lamar Jackson is the best player in football. He is a multi-time MVP, and he might go on to win another MVP this year. I think the only thing that is really stopping him is the record of the team right now. We'll see how it finishes up. But the reason I like Baltimore against the Chiefs this year is I think they have the most unstoppable run game in football. When you combine Lamar Jackson's ability to run the ball and Derrick Henry's ability to run the ball, I understand that's been a strength of the Chiefs defense this year. But almost nobody can stop this run game. It really is a ball control team. And in a cold weather environment like Kansas City, that run game will be so crucial. On top of that, they've in some ways built their offense to attack the Chiefs. When you're talking about multiple tight end threats against a defense that is not good against tight ends, objectively, statistically, Isaiah Likely went crazy in week 1. They were a toe away from taking that game to overtime due to Isaiah Likely. Mark Andrews has since improved his play since week 1. Andrews likely are dynamic. Zay Flowers is quick, twitchy, and difficult to cover in space. They added Deontay Johnson. We'll see if he ever gets involved in this offense. And then they've got a running back like Justice Hill they can throw to as well. And Lamar can just make crazy plays in big games. Now, has Lamar proven himself in the playoffs to the degree that I would like? That's the reason they're only at 4, because they've lost, an AFC championship last year. They lost in week 1, and Lamar in the playoffs has not been quite the same player. But I think when you look at their deficiencies, you also have reason to believe in the Ravens, because their defense, their biggest deficiency is their pass defense, specifically their vertical pass defense, their deep pass defense. And the Ravens don't have to worry about that as much against a team like Kansas City, a team that is very horizontal, a team that runs the ball quite a bit, a team that uses a lot of screens, a lot of end arounds, a lot of Patrick Mahomes magic on the move, finding his tight ends. When you think about the Ravens, the area of strength of their defense is their run defense. The area of strength of their defense is their tackling from Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey in the middle of the field. When you think of the Chiefs, they don't have much of a vertical perimeter threat. They're a lot about the middle of the field. They're a lot about, running the ball. They're a lot about ball control. So a lot of the deficiencies of the Ravens team, which is defensively this year, they won't really show up in that matchup as much. So that's why I bring up the Ravens in this top 4 as a team with a dynamic, great quarterback, a championship level coach. Now Tucker's got to play better, because if you want to win a playoff game, you've got to make a big kick against the Chiefs. But they've always been good on special teams, and their defense does not match up poorly with the Chiefs either, because of the way the Chiefs play right now. So I put the Ravens at number 4. OG says putting the Ravens at 4, Steelers at 7 is insane. I just kind of explained it. So the difference being, the Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson. The difference being the Steelers and how they've played against the Chiefs, and the Ravens playing against the Chiefs. The Ravens have actually beat the Chiefs before, but they've also played in continuous close games. And then on top of that, I feel like in a big game, in a playoff game, I just want that quarterback that can take over. I just want that guy. Now, can the Steelers win? But then you also have to factor in this is also on the road. So this is not in Pittsburgh, right? This is probably going to be in Kansas City. So can you pull off that win? At least the Ravens, they were there earlier this year, and they nearly took that game to overtime. I wonder what would have happened if one of the toes was in bounds. We wonder what would have happened. The Ravens have one of the best offenses in football. There's no doubt about that. Feel like people forgot that if Likely wasn't out of bounds, the Ravens might have beat them this season. Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to another team that could have beat them this season. I couldn't put them on the list because they might not even make the playoffs. But the Cincinnati Bengals, who we've brought up with Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow's battle on Sunday night, the Bengals have beaten the Chiefs before, and they could have beat them this season as well. And if the Bengals somehow do manage to make the playoffs, that's just a quick honorable mention that I do want to throw in there. If they somehow get in, they're always a threat because of how well Joe Burrow is playing. Quarterback matters. At number 3, another quarterback that is capable of making some big plays and out of structure magic, that is CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans. I don't think people will consider the Texans this high on their list outside of maybe me, but I just believe the Texans are about to go on a run. They play tonight against the Dallas Cowboys. It's in Dallas. We'll see how they play. They're about 7.5 point favorites. They're a team that's getting healthier. CJ Stroud has proven he can be one of the most accurate and precise passers in football, on top of being one of the best under pressure in the NFL. He has not played quite as well this year as he did last year. I think a lot of that has to do with the infrastructure around him, the play calling, the offensive line, that sort of stuff. But I do believe the offensive line played a little bit better against the Lions. And when you think about the Texans this year, and you think about the Bills and the Lions, who I think for a majority of people will be the two, like them and the Chiefs will be in the top 3 of their power rankings. Bills, Lions, Chiefs, in any order, right? The Texans easily could have beat the Lions last week without their best player, Nico Collins, and their third best player, Will Anderson. They could have beat them, definitely. I know they didn't, but they could have. And then they beat the Bills at home. So they're capable of going toe-to-toe with the best teams in the NFL. They easily have one of the best pass rushes in football, and we haven't actually seen this defense with all the pieces of their pass rush yet. Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, Danico Autry, Mario Edwards, Jerry Hughes, Derek Barnett, all those guys. We haven't seen all the pieces. Christian Harris at linebacker is yet to play this year, but the defense, I feel like, when fully healthy, is top 3 in the NFL. We saw that against Jared Goff. 5 interceptions against Jared Goff, and arguably a top 2 or 3 offense in football. Offensively, when Nico Collins is in there, they're a different offense. He can separate, he can create one-on-one. He's a man coverage destroyer, and he is a yak threat. He's a big play threat on every down. You combine that with Tank Dell and a run game from Joe Mixon. And considering the Chiefs offensively are not super dynamic, they're very slow-paced. With the Texans having the defense they have and having a quarterback like Stroud, if they can hang in a game down to the wire, they can make some plays between Stroud and Collins and Tank Dell and Joe Mixon. Mixon played the Chiefs many times in the playoffs before. They can make something happen in that game, especially D'Amico Ryans being the defensive coach he is against Andy Reid. I feel like they're not outgunned in any way, shape, or form. The offensive line is a concern for me, but otherwise, I mean, that's a similar concern to what the Chiefs have at the tackle position. So, yeah, I have the Texans at number 3. I think they're going to sneakily move up in a lot of people's minds over these next 5 weeks. I think they're about to go on a big run. And they do play the Chiefs and they do play the Ravens in December. We're going to see how they match up with those teams, specifically Kansas City, as we talk about this discussion. I do recall a team, the Bengals, in 2021 that was on the rise that not a lot of people believed in. They actually went to Kansas City, beat Kansas City. Then in the AFC Championship, they went to Kansas City again. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs. This kind of similarly sets up for the Texans. I'm just throwing that out there late in December. At number 2, the Texans are crazy high. We've got in the chat. I get it. I get it, but you just don't see what I see, bro. I see the future. I'm just throwing that out there. At number 2, the Detroit Lions are at number 2. The Lions are the favorite to get to the Super Bowl in the NFC. They just beat an NFL football team 52-6. And as good as the Chiefs have been, back-to-back Super Bowl champions, they have yet to score 30 points this year, 31 points this year. I think they scored 30 against the Bucs. They've yet to score 31 points. And I honestly don't think they could destroy a team, any team in the NFL, as bad as the Lions beat the Jacksonville Jags. So in terms of explosiveness and domination factor, Detroit certainly has it. You think about Detroit, they beat the Chiefs last year in week 1. I know there's no Chris Jones or Travis Kelce, but the Lions have since very much improved, especially defensively. And I look at Detroit, you have the best offensive line in football. You've got a quarterback that's actually never lost to Patrick Mahomes. I think he's played him twice or 3 times. He's beat him both times. You have a quarterback in Goff who's been to NFC championships twice, 2 different teams. Been to the Super Bowl once. He's experienced big games. So it's not too crazy there. You've got a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. You've got great running game, control the ball. You've got a phenomenal play caller. There's perhaps no play caller better right now in football than Ben Johnson, who understands his scheme, who understands his guys, that, how to get them the ball. Jamison Williams is a big play threat that can make anything happen down the field. Sam Laporta is a dangerous tight end. They could just beat you in so many different ways, shapes, or forms. Screen game, run game, play action, drop back pass. And it feels like Goff would have time to throw. It feels like they would be able to run the ball a bit. And then on defense, they're very good against the run. They're aggressive. They play a lot of man coverage. They get in your face. They play physical. There's perhaps no better safety tandem in football right now. Campbell at linebackers playing great. They added Zadarius Smith to the pass rush to help them out to replace Aiden Hutchinson. The defense has been way better this year than last year. This feels like right now, arguably the best team in football. The reason they're not number 1, part of it is they have less of a chance to play the Chiefs. Part of it is that we've just seen this other team go toe-to-toe with them, including this past week at a higher level. So the Lions still have that question to answer when it comes to the matchup of playing the Chiefs. Lions now not being number one is insane, says M. Taylor. It's not insane. We'll talk about why. The Lions should be one, but I can respect that since the team who isn't listed yet just beat them, says Braylon. Yes, that is true. I would also consider this, as much as I just spoke about Jared Goff, right? I think when you look at the Chiefs defensively, I do think the Chiefs kind of match up better defensively against the Lions, believe it or not, than they do against the Bills, I would say. Just the style that they play. I think that game would be pretty gritty. I think it would be pretty gritty. The way the Chiefs have stopped the run this year, the way that the Chiefs can play, tight coverage down the field, I do think that would give, and we've seen Goff, 5 interceptions just the past week against a good defense. Like, I think Goff is a little bit less reliable in a big spot than Josh Allen at number one and the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, to me right now, is the best quarterback in the NFL. I just ranked the quarterbacks last week for Bleacher Report, and I think there's nobody better in the world right now at this moment than Josh Allen. And I think he showed that against the Chiefs. I think considering the competition he faced defensively, considering that 4th and 2 run, the rockets he threw down the field, I think he was the better player in that game against Patrick Mahomes. And this Bills team, the reason they're my number one is not just because of Allen and what he can do with his arm and his legs and how he's matured as a player and how he's played against the Chiefs in general. I mean, they should have beat the Chiefs in the playoffs before if it were not for a couple mental mistakes from Sean McDermott coaching-wise. I mean, what was it, 13 seconds? If he just kicks the ball inbounds on a kickoff, they probably win the game. Like, honestly, it was almost that simple. But you look at how Josh Allen has played in these playoff games against Kansas City, the stats he's put up. You look at Josh Allen in general in playoff games, he's like one of the greatest players in playoff history on a per-game basis when it comes to total yardage, when it comes to total touchdowns, touchdown-to-interception ratio. When you look at those sort of things, there's just not a quarterback in the NFL right now that can match Mahomes in a playoff setting. And the only guy, it feels like, is Josh Allen. Like, that's the only guy. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, we saw the Bills beat the Chiefs, and I thought it was fairly convincing. And the Bills are the most balanced Buffalo team we've ever seen in terms of they're the toughest Bills team I think we've ever seen. They can run the ball better than the Bills have ever ran the ball. They've got more threats, I feel like, in terms of depth than the Bills have ever had in the receiving core. Like, Kincaid and Coleman did not play against the Chiefs, and they still put up 30 points against a top 3 defense in the NFL. So considering that, you didn't have your jump ball guy in Coleman, you didn't have your reliable tight end chain mover in Kincaid, you were still able to have a good game out of Curtis Samuel, a great game out of Khalil Shakir, big catches out of Amari Cooper. James Cook can catch the football. Dawson Knox stepped up. Like, you've got so much depth at that receiving position. The offensive line in Buffalo, I think, is the best it's ever been. They didn't have Spencer Brown at right tackle against Kansas City Chiefs. They're starting right tackle. He didn't play. They didn't have 5 starters. I know the game was at home, but they didn't have 5 starters. They still beat the Chiefs by 9 points. Not by one score, by literally 2 scores. They didn't have 5 starters. And then defensively, they're still going to get arguably their best defensive player back. Matt Milano has not played the entire season, and I understand he's been hurt the last 2 years, but that guy is a sweet linebacker. Him and Bernard in the middle might be the best linebacker tandem in football. Greg Rousseau, the way he's playing, Von Miller, the way he has resurged, a big resurgence from him. Ed Oliver is a stud. Benford is playing unbelievable. Douglas is playing well. Like, across the defense, McDermott knows how to play against the Chiefs. They've played so many times. They've beat them 4 straight times in the regular season. Like, yes, they have not got over that hump in the playoffs, but it feels like 4 straight times in the regular season, there's something they're doing right. And every single one of their postseason games has been absolutely down to the wire, could have went either way, flip of a coin. And I think to, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, like, like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes is very much similar. Like Brady always won those playoff matchups until a certain point, 2006. And then, Mahomes has won these playoff matchups the first few. Could we be seeing a similar change here for Josh Allen? Could this be his time this year? Who knows? Maybe. Mr. Porter says Chiefs really got exposed yesterday. I still think they're obviously at the top of the league. I just think the way that their special teams, the way that their defense, the way that their offense controls the ball, the way they scheme up their offense from Andy Reid, and the way that Mahomes plays on third down in high leverage situations, they're still as good of a team as any team. I do think, though, they've been kind of getting by in a lot of close games. And at a certain point, you're just not going to win a close game, every close game. There's a reason why a lot of people, when they look season to season in the NFL, a big reason that people always look at close games record as like an indication that a team is going to fall off from one season to the next or improve from one season to the next is because it's not consistent. Like usually teams have to blow teams out. And that's the thing with the Chiefs right now. They just play too many close games. Like at a certain point, you're just going to lose. Vikings are sleepers. Yeah, the Vikings are a team that I could have definitely put on this list at the bottom. I think it's unlikely that they make the Super Bowl, but they're definitely a threat. I think the Vikings, the problem for me is that Sam Darnold, I don't trust him. I don't trust him in a big game against Steve Spagnuolo's defense. And we did see the Vikings play the Chiefs last year, and I felt like the Chiefs, and I know that was a different Vikings team. They're better now, but I remember that game, and I feel like it was close, but I never felt like the Chiefs were in any threat to lose, and that was in Minnesota. I just feel like, yeah, Flores, great defensive coach. Maybe in a Super Bowl, he could really scheme something up. We've seen it before against Sean McVay and the Rams. Jefferson, it's really tough to cover, and those receivers are really good, but is Sam Darnold the quarterback I'm going to pick in that big game? I'm just not sure. I think that's really what's holding me back. On top of they would have to go through the entire NFC, which I think is a little unlikely. I think they can win one or two playoff games maybe, but it's tough. Keep sleeping on Tomlin and the Steelers? Sure. I guess I'm sleeping on them for saying they're a threat to beat the Chiefs when they've never done it before. So I don't know. We'll see. The Lions would win a gritty game with the Chiefs. I mean, their slogan is grit. Definitely they could do that. I think the game would actually be a lot like last year's week 1 game, where it's a lot of fourth down conversions, high leverage scenarios. They're blitzing Goff. Can he make that big throw on third down? Can they fake a punt or something? Like, I think the game would actually be a lot like last year, and their defense, I think, would have to make some plays for sure as well. But the good thing about playing the Chiefs right now is it just feels like they're not. You kind of have to get to like 27 points to beat them. It feels like if you can get in that range, I think you can win the game against the Chiefs, which the Lions are definitely capable of doing. PB Everett says, well, the Lions play the Bills in December, so we'll find out who's the bigger threat. I don't think that necessarily head-to-head doesn't, again, Steelers-Ravens, for example. Steelers beat the Ravens every year. Does that necessarily mean the Ravens are not a bigger threat for the Super Bowl or a bigger threat against the Chiefs? I don't know. That's up for discussion. That's up for debate. It's divisional things, but the Lions and the Bills, would you say the Texans beat the Bills? Would you say the Texans are a bigger threat than the Bills? I don't know. So like a lot of teams beat a lot of teams. Would you say the Patriots beat the Bengals? Would you say the Patriots are a bigger chance to beat the Chiefs despite the history between the Bengals and the Chiefs? Just throwing that out there. So yeah, I mean, we'll see if that could be a playoff preview. That could be a Super Bowl preview. Lions, Bills. So that I think is more important. Forget about the Chiefs. That could be a Super Bowl game that we're talking about in the regular season that we get a chance to see twice in one season. That's very likely. And they might be the two favorites in their conference, outside of Kansas City. So yeah, that's going to be a huge game. My list for the teams that have the greatest chance of facing and beating the Kansas City Chiefs and holding them from a three-peat. At number 8, the Denver Broncos. Number 7, the Pittsburgh Steelers. At number 6, the Los Angeles Chargers. At number 5, fly, Eagles, fly. At number 4, the Baltimore Ravens. At number 3, the Houston Texans. Watch out. At number 2, the Detroit Lions. And at number 1, the Buffalo Bills. They just did it. Thank you, Bills. We don't have to talk about no 07 Patriot comparisons anymore. From a Patriots fan, sincerely, thank you, Josh Allen. That was your Monday morning reaction presented by MetaQuest. I'm Mitch. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next Monday. Peace.